And then this will be, I'll run through 2 slides, very brief, just giving a little bit of background on myself. And then the last slide, I have prepared topics to talk about if the bulk of folks on this call are shy and don't want to ask any questions. But the intention is for it to be extremely interactive and free-flowing, and very transparent as relates to all forms of recruiting for buy-side jobs. So, all right. Let me get to this. I can see the actual slides. We'll dive in. Great to meet everyone. Thank you for taking the time on this Friday night to connect and chat about recruiting. My name's Kenny Johnson. I am a private equity investor at KKR. My intention for this is to give a little bit of overview, not too deep, but of what the entire process looks like for recruiting for buy-side jobs, investing jobs, and then AMA as relates to anything you guys are curious about as relates to recruiting, networking, resume, LinkedIn, day in the life, all that jazz. So I'll start with a 5-minute background of my odyssey and how I landed into these roles and these jobs. And then we'll love to hear a lot of your questions. And this is a very goofy young picture that is at Blackstone. And you can tell by how like old and ancient it looks on the inside, but that was probably my first or second year. So before the long hair, and looks like it's before Invisalign as well. But I ended up going to the University of Michigan for undergraduate, where I studied finance and public policy. I knew going into Michigan that, and also, by the way, I'm from Michigan, from the Detroit area, if anyone here is from the Metro Detroit area. So Michigan was my top choice because it had 1, a sound business school, 2, great athletic programs, and then 3, a pretty good social life. So it's a pretty healthy mix of a college experience. And funny enough, if you look at a lot of the firms on the street, a lot of folks ended up coming from like a Big Ten school like Michigan. And one of the best pieces of advice I can give you as relates to exploring jobs on the street is leverage your network as much as possible. I think when I was recruiting for internships and full-time, the first people that I would reach out to were Michigan alumni, and they're typically the first people to respond to my outreach. So I highly recommend leveraging your alma mater to make sure you have that affinity there. So I went to Michigan, studied finance, public policy. Right off the bat, my freshman summer, I knew I wanted to get a job in finance, so I worked at Morgan Stanley. I did, what did I do? Sales and trading for my first summer on the equity side, and then transitioned to my sophomore summer. I did equity research, and then that's when I pivoted to do investing. And Blackstone just launched their internship program for the private equity roles, and I applied and somehow got the job, and they kicked my butt for 10 weeks, and then was lucky enough to get a full-time offer to join the private equity team right out of school, where I did my full-time gig. And I stayed with Blackstone all the way through 2022. And then that is when I transitioned to KKR. And that's where I sat on the middle market private equity fund, focused on impact investing. And I did that all the way until now. So that is my experience. But I've done, in terms of recruiting, I had interest, of course, in banking when I was an undergraduate, because that was the craze. Everyone wanted to jump into investment banking. But then once I realized that investing was a lot better, I explored the full gamut of buy-side recruiting. So I did private equity recruiting. I did hedge fund recruiting. I did venture capital recruiting. I looked at portfolio company recruiting. And all those were just really interesting, cool roles for me to just explore. Got offers in a bunch, but ultimately ended up staying on the private equity route. So that is my background. In terms of sort of the experience and where I am knowledgeable in the process for recruiting, I helped lead our analyst and associate recruiting at Blackstone and KKR. So I know all about finding candidates on campus, off cycle, on cycle, maintaining our pipeline of interested candidates with their resumes, help with interviews, behavioral, technical, case studies, all that jazz. So, and then once we sort of have folks that have offers or have folks that we have sort of coming to super days, we kind of figure out who we want. So I've been of course, when I was a student and when I was doing internships and full-time transitions, a candidate, but then more recently spent time on the other side of the table, actually interviewing folks, filtering folks, and trying to figure out who's best to fit and join our teams. So yeah, that is a little bit about me. And then before we jump into the AMA, I will pause there and see if anyone has questions about sort of background experience before we jump into the AMA. And I cannot see the chat right now, so let me jump here to see if I can see the chat. Oh, Zingerman's. Yeah, so if anyone is familiar with Ann Arbor, Zingerman's is the best sandwich shop on campus. So go blue. All right, so if no questions there, what I did was I had topics here that I think are worth talking about for the next 30 minutes that we have together. But honestly, like, I'm here to answer anything that you guys want to talk about. So this is my backup plan for if you guys didn't have any questions as relates to this, but happy to run through literally all of these and talk about sort of my point of view and how these things work. I can ramble about my job and investing and buying companies literally all day, every day. So I'll do that, but I will pause for 10 seconds and see if any folks in the chat want to sort of jump in with questions. But if not, I will start right off the top and just discuss the difference between on-cycle versus off-cycle recruiting for private equity, growth equity, venture. Why did I go from Blackstone to KKR? Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of just like jumping from two nearly equivalent firms. I think for me, what I was looking for my particular strategy, and background, when I was at Blackstone, I had the chance to help them launch a fund at Blackstone, and that was Blackstone Impact. And that was a growth equity / middle market private equity strategy where we bought companies that did really good things in the world. That was a newer strategy because we launched that in 2021. But before that, the two mega funds that already had established teams and funds were TPG Rise and KKR. And I got offers from both of those. And I wanted to join a team that had an established fund that had fundraising traction for the second fund, and then like a big team as well. And that's like a really big thing that you want to look for is like when you're going into an investing role, of course, the firm is nice, the pay is nice, but you really want to see like which kind of franchise has traction and momentum. Like if you're joining a team that is struggling to raise their fund, their portfolio companies are marked at less than a cost, and like folks are getting chopped, like that's like a bad place to jump to. But KKR is like literally a rocket ship. Like team is growing, fund sizes are growing, and it was a really good time to grow. And I also wanted to go to the West Coast, and KKR was opening their San Francisco office or Menlo Park office for this team, and they let me join the team. So I moved to San Francisco for about 2 years. Okay, can you speak to off-cycle recruiting process looks like at Blackstone and KKR? Yeah, absolutely. So the off-cycle recruiting process was kind of equivalent for both of the firms, but for these type of jobs, off-cycle is, if for folks that are not familiar with the topic, off-cycle versus on-cycle. On-cycle means that every year around the same time, we have all of our headhunters reach out to candidates as well as banks and like a blast email. And in a 1 week period, we reach out to candidates, we review resumes, we interview them, and we give them an offer, and we have them start 1 or 2 years later. That's on cycle. That's typically like the ridiculous craze where folks are stressed out, coming in for super days back to back, and a lot of the bankers are calling days off to go to like the dentist or doctor's visit, but they're actually interviewing at firms. And off cycle is when a team on an investment firm like KKR has a seat, but they don't want to pull from the on cycle pool, or they didn't participate in on cycle recruiting. So they just want to like have someone join their team on a regular ad hoc basis. And how off cycle works is typically we have like a hot list of candidates that we know are interested in our team and our strategy. And what we do is for off cycle, when we have a position open, we blast that full list of interested candidates. And then we also engage with headhunters to find more candidates. And then we go through traditional recruiting process of reviewing the resumes, bringing the top candidates in for first, second round interviews, put it in through technicals, case studies, and then super days. But I think the key thing to note there is that you either have to be on the radar of the headhunter or you have to be on the radar of that investment team so that they know when the position is open that like you're like on a hot list. Okay. Excuse me. Hopefully that answers the question. And if I'm not answering the questions like enough, like Rishi, if you have like a follow-up question, feel free to jump back into the chat and ask like a follow-up to that. But that's how off-cycle recruiting works for those. Is like a lot of these firms, it's not like we have like a whole class we want to fill. It's kind of like one or two seats that are now open because an associate left or an analyst left, and we kind of have this hot list of folks we want to bring back into the mix. Can you include in your responses the perspective of someone who does not have a formal finance background? I love this question. Thank you, Akila. And hopefully I'm pronouncing all these names right. But for someone that doesn't have a finance background, like I think that's the biggest myth that exists is that you need to go to Wharton and that you need to have done Wall Street prep since you were 10 years old and that you need to be going to Harvard Business School to work in private equity at Blackstone and KKR. That's not the case at all. I'm not a genius. I'm not a rocket scientist. Literally what I do is I read all day and I'm paid to ask questions to management teams. And I'm talented at doing addition, subtraction, and division and multiplication on Excel. And that's it. And everything about our jobs are teachable and coachable. And I think the most important things for folks that don't come from a finance or investment banking background is that you're intellectually curious. You're like passionate about businesses in the economy, and that you're coachable and willing to learn. So that's like the most important thing. Like we've had someone join on our team who went to Yale, didn't have any banking or private equity experience. She did do a summer in Bain Consulting, or she did do a full-time in Bain Consulting, where she like learned her fundamentals, but she's still like an absolute rock star principal on our team. So it's not necessary. Did I ever interview non-traditional profiles? Yep. How should these folks approach recruiting differently? So folks that are coming from consulting, I'll go through each. A consulting background, you are, if you can position yourself in the right way, very, very, very highly demanded in an investing seat, because this answers like a day of my life question, but like when I'm doing diligence on a deal and in a company, part of like Excel literally is like 10% of the job, depending on the team you're on. A large percent when you're on a large deal is doing a lot of company and commercial due diligence. So, and that what that means for folks, I'm gonna try to make sure I understand, break down things in a simplistic way. But when you're buying a company, you're buying the entire company. So you need to know everything that you can about that business, their customers, their market. And that's what consultants do, like market consultants do every single day. So if you're at a consulting firm working on TAM analysis, you're doing customer calls, and you're doing diligence on industries, like you are pretty much doing a large part of a private equity investor job. But we just take that type of work, do it faster, and then we also do the analysis financially, and then we also do the other diligence streams. So if you have that consulting background, I highly recommend that you spend time learning the Excel side and sort of the technical side, as well as the accounting side. And I think you'd be a really good candidate. And then for Big Four, that goes for the exact same way. So if you're from a Big Four accounting background, that means that like the accounting and the financial analysis part of the job, you're probably going to excel really good at. But if you want to sort of improve your candidacy, I would highly recommend you looking at understanding how to do market work, understanding how to do customer calls, understanding sort of like the other parts of the private equity value chain. So depending on where your background is, whether it's consulting, PE, banking, or accounting, see where your existing experience fits within the overarching like flow of a deal. And then make sure, of course, you hit where you have familiar with, but then all the other stuff, make sure you try to get experience or exposure at as well. And this can literally be like watching YouTube videos on that. It could be like Udemy classes, etc. So try to complement and fill those other gaps. But the recruiting process is still the same. Get on headhunters roles. Try to make sure that you tailor your resumes to be as universally acceptable as possible, and network as much as you can. And the cool thing is, consulting and accounting, a lot of your clients if you're on like a buy side gig, are private equity firms. So if you can kind of finagle your way into like the client database and try to figure out what kind of projects private equity firms are working with your existing firm at, try to get those key contacts, and then boom, you already have an in with someone that knows the pedigree of what you're working at, and you have a contact. So I hope that helps, Sebastian. Sorry, I'm paused for water. All right. How did you prepare for networking? And then how often would one need to brush up on technicals or behaviorals? Great question. So for networking, look, networking, you just got to have that in you. Networking never stops, like never. Um, I think you just need to have the ability to connect with people, um, the the stomach to accept rejection a lot, and the creativity to get in front of people. Like I networked myself into KKR and Blackstone, and then now every single day I have to network myself onto cap tables of companies. So I'm constantly reaching out, not getting responses, following up, cold calling, cold emailing people literally every day. So networking never stops. I think a good way to prepare for networking is put yourself out there. Like I highly recommend, whether you're on campus or in graduate school, go to all these events and meet as many people as you can and just build a network. Um, or just start going to industry events, like go to private equity events. Like my job is to go to conferences and stuff and meet with companies and other private equity firms. Like show up to one of those, right? Try to go to uh, RES, which is a big solar and industrial conference, and just meet with all the companies and firms that are there. Like I'll go there and I'll be like, oh, I'm trying to meet this company, but oh, someone asked me for a job at Blackstone. That's kind of cool. Like now you're on top of my head. So I would encourage you to attend all the networking things possible. Brushing up on technicals. So it's easier if your day-to-day currently involves it. Like if you're a student, if you're taking accounting or valuation classes, you're kind of getting reps that way. Or if you're an accountant, like you're already getting reps that way. But if you don't have day-to-day technical analysis embedded into your life, I recommend, if you're in like the heat of interview season, like signing up for a Udemy class or a YouTube video that focuses on technicals and case studies, and like watch it every night before you go to bed or every single weekend, just to get like familiar and get reps to understand the flow of DCF, the LBO, financial analysis, all that stuff. So you don't want to like have an interview with a big firm and a technical interview in 2 weeks and like you start cramming technicals the day before. Like it's not going to work. Is it still possible to recruit for these roles postgraduate? Heck yeah. Mm-hmm. It's very possible. Because the thing is, like, people come in and out of these firms at all levels all the time. So off-cycle recruiting applies not just to analyst or associate. It applies to VP, it applies to principal, it applies to MD, directors. So regardless of your age and regardless of where you worked at before or where you went to school, like there's always seats. From your internships to full-time offers, how many of them were through networking, just applying through jobs? Good question. So for me, all of them had an element of networking. Like I didn't seriously interview with the team that I didn't socially vet first. So like when I was looking to leave Blackstone, my top firms were KKR, TPG for PE, Sequoia for VC, and then Tiger Global and Coatue for hedge fund. Um, and I made sure that like before I submitted my resume or applied to anything, that I met with all of the Michigan alumni at those firms, met with like the friends in the industry that I had that worked there to ask them about the day in their life. So I socially vetted these places before. And I think that's probably like the most important thing to do. Because then I was able to sort of pounce on those opportunities and have a person that's already there move me in the right direction. Right. So I think networking is probably the most important part. And I mean, maybe I did it when I was in college, but like for real full-time gigs, I didn't apply to a job without networking first. And then if you don't have a strong alumni network within the industry, do you recommend reaching out to headhunters? Absolutely. Like there's no downside to reaching out to headhunters unless your resume sucks, right? Like I would reach out to headhunters now if you have a polished, good resume and a solid LinkedIn. And I highly recommend that you just let them know who you are. Like literally hop on the phone with them and say, "Hi, my name is Samson. I live in this area. I'm very interested in joining this growth equity team, private equity team, venture, or hedge fund. This is my current background. Unsure if you have roles today that fit that, but I'd love to be on the radar in your short list for anything that fits this criteria in terms of level, experience, etc. hits. And then boom, you're going to be on the email list. And then once you're part of the headhunter network, they email you every single day, not every day, but like every other day with like opportunities. Like I still get on like my personal Umish email, like 10 headhunter emails a week talking about this fund is hiring, this place is hiring, this place is hiring. I ignore all of them, but like get in front of the headhunters. But make sure you're polished first. It's not like interview ready, but like one, understand what you actually want to do so that they can position you well. Because you need to understand like what the role of a headhunter is. A headhunter is a matchmaker that matches a candidate and a firm, and they are paid once a candidate is placed. So they want to find who's interested in something, who's hiring for something, and try to make that best match. So they're highly incentivized to meet you and do their best to put you in a good role. What about senior associate roles going through internal referrals, utilizing industry contacts or previous MDs? That's that's good. So for senior associate roles, I think the name of the game there is being on the shortest of short list when a seat comes up. And like for an investing job, I gotta be very honest. Like if you are a banker and you want to reach out to your MD and say, "Hey, we work with Blackstone on deals. Can you put in a word for me at Blackstone?" Like if an MD calls me and says like, "Hey, I have this candidate that was my associate. He's now looking to invest on the buy side." I'm not gonna care that much, right? Like I like for in a firm like Blackstone and KKR, like we don't care where you come from. We just want to make sure that you're the best. And that's the beauty of it. Um, I think there's like sometimes this misconception that like we hire a bunch of relatives and family members and all this stuff. Like, no, not really. Like everyone is from a very different, unique background. But the good thing is like they literally are all the best, like the smartest, hardest working people, like creative people that you know. So going through like previous MDs to get in front of some, like unless it's to get an intro call with folks and like get on their radar and build a personal relationship, yeah. But like don't bank on your old boss being able to get you a seat at an investment shop. Um, but for senior associate roles, like I highly recommend because there's not like a class opening up. It's usually like one or two seats that are available. So you should definitely know people that are at your level that are working there now. So that comes through networking, getting coffee with them, chatting about deals, chatting about markets, and then you know starting off as like friends. And then once things happen, you're kind of on the shortest of short list when that seat comes up. And sorry if I'm rushing through some of these. I just see that there's like 16 more questions, and I want to make sure I answer literally all of them. So, but if I'm not answering them sufficiently, like keep circling back and putting it into the chat. And thank you guys for doing this too. I appreciate you guys asking these very amazing, thoughtful questions. Can you go over some common interview questions that you were asked during an interview? What are your tips for preparing for them? There's no common questions. Everything is different depending on the firm, the size of the team, like how much they want to grill you, if that person had a good or bad day, if someone wants to be an asshole or not. Like in behavioral, the big things are what's your background, what's your story, why you're interested in the team, what do you like to do for fun. Like for behavior interview, the highest level thing that we're trying to assess is that you're a nice person and that I would like to hang out around you because I'm going to be spending a lot of hours around you. So that's the purpose of a behavior interview. So try to figure out everything that you can to figure out if you're a sociable, regular person. And then for technicals, big things to prep there, I think are like we're not going to ask you to like walk me through a DCF. Like that's like for banker questions. Like for investing gigs, it's typically like how does the LBO work? The big thing is a case study. And what a case study is that I will give you a fake company with like 1 to 2 or 2 to 4 page PDF with like details on that company, on the market, financials, and then I'll ask you to like summarize your thoughts and build a model on it. And that's the interview for technicals. And the best way to prep is to do a lot of those ahead of time to learn how to articulate your thoughts about a business, about an opportunity, about a market, about financials, to really have a eye for figuring out if something's a good or bad opportunity, what are those key risks, etc. So it's like a super mini simulation of what like an actual investor does every day. So that's what's going to be on the technical side. And best way to do is to get a lot of mock interviews in. Like, yeah, do. Okay. Any advice for those that are AN1 seeking to try and get on the radar of those? About many different strategies. I assume analyst 1, Justin. Okay, I'll circle back on that one. But during interviews, when you're asked to pitch an investment or when given a case, how do you demonstrate that you can think like an investor? Good. I love this question, Sophie. So the best way to do that is if you're an investment banker right now, understanding like what really goes into a sim and what matters is good. So like if you're working on sims, like actually reading those and understanding those, thinking and understanding like an investor, this may be overkill, but like the best approach I have is like studying hedge fund managers, looking at like investment theses that people build on public companies, trying to read as much as you can about Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, and how they articulate investment theses. Because like a thesis, like a headline thesis is like, I think the world is going this way. I think in order for the world to go this way, these industries need to exist. In order for these industries need to exist, these are the top 3 companies in those industries. And within those top 3, this is the best business because of X, Y, and Z. But there are going to be these key risks, but I think these risks are mitigated because of X, Y, and Z. That's how an investor thinks. And the more that you can read about investors, public thoughts, research public companies, and build your own theses, I think that's the most important thing. So, but Sophie, all we do every day as investors is read. So the more that you can read about investing, reading Buffett's annual reports, like you kind of start to get the psychology of an investor, of how we think about businesses and opportunities. So yeah, sorry, I brushed over that one, but that like we can talk about that for months. But it's an amazing question. So thanks for that. Is it the same thing for real estate positions? Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, sorry to interrupt, but someone's off mute and eating. Can you probably mute your mic? Thanks.
Sure. I was about to say, that is not me. I'm not eating. Thanks for that. Okay. Let me go back to my list. Uh-oh. When I jumped out, it kind of messed up my list. Where was that? That was at Sophie's question. Okay. Where is Sophie? Samson, Sophie. Yeah. Justin, I'll get back to yours. Just let me know what AN1 means. Who are AN1? Okay. Is it the same thing for real estate? So for real estate, yes. The process of like jumping it, like networking, getting on the firm's radar, like for Blackstone's private equity team, we had that same process of finding candidates, interviewing candidates, et cetera. And then for the real estate team, it's the exact same flow. And then I think like I've never done real estate private equity, but like real estate's like even more of a networked industry. So the more that you can get in the mix of investors, lenders, developers, like that's going to be like a really good value add for you. Because like for all of these gigs, the second that you get a principal, a director, or an MD and time on their calendar regularly so that they know you personally, you have 100x times of a better shot at getting the job. Granted that you're a good, strong candidate and that you know the stuff and that you are a really good fit. Everything else they can teach you, right? So like that's the networking side, is like get in front of these people. That's the most important thing. But for real estate, like speak the lingo. If you're a real estate person, you need to be understanding everything about developments, about new projects, about regulation, all the stuff. So make sure you speak the lingo for real estate. I am not a real estate person, so I don't speak that lingo. And then what does market work, customer calls look like on a day-to-day? Really, really, really good question. So it depends on the stage of the deal. If it's pre-IOI, or if it's like we're looking at a company, we're trying to learn about it, I will engage with GLG or Alpha Sites, which are large networks. And these are companies that have networks of a bunch of different seasoned operators and professionals in the industry. And let me get a really good example. Here's a good example. Like Leland, for example, great business, just raised a Series A. I want to invest in their Series B, possibly, right? If I'm interested in the company and there's not a deal right now, I want to become the smartest person on Leland. So what I would do is I would go to GLG and I would go to Alpha Sites, and they're like a network, a marketplace. And just like how they have coaches for Leland, GLG and Alpha Sites have like experts on the industry. And I would speak with 30 experts that know Leland, that know the industry, and I'll grill them and ask them for 1 hour, what does this company do? What is this market? Is it good or bad? What are your thoughts on Leland? What are your thoughts on Leland's management team? What are the key risks in this industry, right? And I pay these people $1,000 an hour. It's kind of crazy, right? But it's actually true. And they will tell me everything about this industry. So by the end of 30 calls, I'm probably one of the most knowledgeable people on my investment team on Leland. And we do that every single, well, not every day, but like a lot of times when there's a company coming up. So that's like customer calls, and then market work. Sometimes we'll like hire Bain or BCG to do like a market study, so we can understand what that TAM or the size is. But a lot of it is doing our own calls and diligence with former employees, former CEOs of a company, competitors, suppliers, etc. So great question. All right, I am zooming through here. I was wondering what advice you would give to upcoming graduates who may have missed full-time recruiting. So Charlotte, on this, really good question. It just depends on what you're going to be doing for the internship or full-time. But what I highly recommend is if you miss the full-time recruiting process and you're looking for analyst roles, odds are there probably aren't going to be like structured opportunities coming up in the next 6 months to 12 months. So what you can do is if you have a gig lined up right after school, if you're a graduate, like invest in that gig. Like if you're going into accounting, consulting, marketing, social media, entrepreneurship, whatever that is, like sit and be in that seat and be the best that you can for the next 12 months. Because then that's going to give you the credibility and the leverage to like go anywhere else. And then on the side, try to study as much as you can on the industry and technicals and investing, and then use the time that you have to network and try to meet with as many people as possible on a particular industry and company. So all because you missed the full-time recruiting window for post-grad doesn't mean you can't network your butt off and kind of be on the radar for second-year recruiting or associate recruiting or off-cycle recruiting. All right. Naved said, you talked about this a little bit, but what advice do you have diligencing firms, especially those not as big as KKR and Blackstone? How do you ensure things with alignment with LPs, fund returns, et cetera? Yeah. So like if you're trying to join a firm that isn't as large, how would you diligence them? Easily like going on LinkedIn, finding folks that have left those firms, and then like asking them like, hey, do you have 5 minutes just to chat about your experience there? That's a really good way to understand the culture. To see if a firm is like good or bad and like knows what they're doing, I highly recommend that you check to see like their fundraising activity. And you don't need to pay for subscriptions or anything. You can simply say like, I don't know, like Huron Capital fundraising or Sequoia fundraising. And you can see that like if a fund was raised in 2012 and they haven't raised another one since, check to see if something's up. But like if folks are coming out to market every single year, that's good. Because like when a firm is raising a fund, that means they have capital. And once they have capital, they can charge management fees. And then with those management fees, they can hire people. But if they're not raising funds, they're relying on their pool of capital of their previous funds. So if someone is fundraising, that's good. And then for fund returns, look, depending on like how junior or senior you are, if you're recruiting for an MD, director, partner role, that is very important because a lot of your compensation is going to be in carry. So I would highly recommend that you like diligence that. But if you're joining as an analyst, associate, maybe even VP, like your comp's not going to be that much in carry. So the fund returns are kind of like like you're not going to be the expert, right? Like if someone has a 2.5 DPI and this other one has a 2.3 DPI, like I'm not going to care that much. So I will more focused on like their fundraising momentum and then the culture. Hope that helped. All right, Noel, any resources that you recommend for getting up to speed on technicals? Yes. So one thing, I'm unsure if you guys know about Leland Plus, but that is like their platform that you can like check out offline resources. I'm going to be uploading like a comprehensive technicals guide of like 100, 200 questions that are like common technicals that I get. I'm crowdsourcing from like all my friends across the street to figure out what's going to be in that, but like I will look up that. I say it all the time and I'm not sponsored yet, but Udemy is like the best resource. It's like $30 a month, but you can learn anything. They have classes on private equity, venture. They have classes on accounting, like all this stuff. Coursera is a good resource too. And then it's harder, but it's very useful. But like open up an Excel file, pull up a 10K of a public company, and then like try to build some analysis. Like try to rebuild their income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement, build an LBO, because you can build everything you need for all these models and technicals using a 10K of a public company. And if you have Excel or Google Sheets, try to build it yourself. It's gonna be hard as shit. But like if you can like use resources, read as you go and try to learn as you go, like actually doing it is going to give you the best prep. So hope that is helpful. And then if you do that every week or every other day, like that experience is just going to compound and you're just going to start building that muscle memory and be very comfortable with the whole technical side of finance. Reasoning for PE over VC. Akila. Apologies for butchering your name if I didn't say it right. This is an amazing question. So for me, I'll give you like a very, very, very like 30-second. And I know I said 12:15 is like, I'm in Europe right now also. So it's like 12:15 my time. I know that was like the hard stop, but I'm down to go until the questions are done. So I don't have a hard stop. That was like the time that was given me. So if anyone has to jump in 3 minutes, feel free to do so. But if you have to jump in 3 minutes, but like I didn't get to your question, I recommend going off mute, jumping in. Otherwise, I'm going to keep ripping through this list. I want to be respectful of your guys' time. But I will give you an overview of like venture capital versus private equity versus growth equity versus hedge fund. Venture capital, you're investing in early stage companies. A lot of the work of a junior person, analyst, associate, principal is meeting with founders, asking them questions about the business, doing a lot of work on market and doing a lot of work on like potential of a product or service because there's no financials yet. And when you're investing, you invest in a lot of companies, and like out of a portfolio of 30, usually 3 or 4 are winners. The rest fail. It's like for my role, like I want to be deep into, I'm a value investor by heart. So I want to be deep into like operations, growing a business, like scaling existing operations, all that stuff. So I wanted a more mature company. Growth equity kind of fits in the middle. Well, I'll jump to private equity. Private equity is we're investing in buying mature companies that are like 10 plus years old, generating cash flow, existing management teams, existing product or service. Nothing needs to be proven because they've been around so long and they're scaled business. Now it's about just like trying to figure out ways to like grow a business marginally. And a lot of the diligence there is understanding the product, the customers, the market size, and then a lot of like the financial analysis to figure out like the historical trends financially of a business that's been going on for the last like 5-10 years. Is it going to keep going during our hold period? And then growth equity is in between. Growth equity is investing in companies that already have a proof of concept, have already proven product market fit, but aren't like old mature companies yet. But these are companies that are like on the preface of like growing and breaking out. And for that, it's a lot of market work, less of the deep financial analysis, still some, but it's like a cool hybrid. So I wanted PE because like that's where you're going to learn just like the chops of like deep investing, diligence, and market stuff. But growth equity was like a cool second option. So if I didn't do PE, I'll probably be in growth. VC, it's a little bit of an easy climb, I would say. I don't want to give no disrespect to anyone that's a venture investor, but like they're not doing deep LBOs and like crazy synergy models and stuff. For the VC climb, you have to be very like social. Like you're going to be networking a lot, meeting a bunch of founders, going to a lot of happy hours, a lot of dinners, because you got to find out who's going to be the next hot founder. So yeah, hopefully that is helpful. And then boom. How do you find the headhunters to reach out to? Good question. If you have friends that are in investment banking, I would just reach out to them and ask them like who has the most value, because all of the banks are kind of automatically added to the headhunter list. So for bankers, you're kind of already good. But if you're not an investment banker, some of them are like Gold Coast. I don't know. Like, I find a way to like DM me or email me on this thing or send me a note on Leland, and I can just literally go through my email and I can take all of the contacts and emails of the headhunters that I've seen over the last month and then send those to you guys. I don't want to do that now, but I think it'll take a little bit of time, but there's like a common list. And then you can also Google like top headhunters that are out there, but keep me accountable and follow me on that, because I can get you guys a list of headhunters. Okay. Brain teasers. Funny enough, I didn't get asked many brain teasers. See, brain teasers are like, I think the best way to prepare for a brain teaser is just like there's like a list of like top 100 brain teasers at consulting and banking and PE gigs. I would just memorize those. But like, if you want to really be good at brain teasing, like you got to practice the art of like slowly thinking and slowly like digesting information, articulating your thoughts, and sounding very confident with something. But Sonny, I hate to blow past this question, but like I probably in all of my recruiting career, I've got asked like maybe like one brain teaser. So like the big shops, like the good teams, I'm not going to waste their time trying to ask a brain teaser. That's not going to move the needle for us. Like I want to know if I can get a beer with you on a weekend or after work, or when we're traveling for a deal, or if like I can trust you with like building a model or looking at a sim. All right. So that's gonna be the most important things. Corinna, how would you approach recruiting if you've been working for 5 to 10 years already and coming from consulting? What position should we aim for? And you don't want to seem too old, but underqualified. Like, look, if you're 7 years of consulting experience, I wouldn't recruit for an analyst role. The thing is with associate, like some folks are like disrespected by associate, but associate can mean a lot of different things at a lot of different firms. I got friends that are 30 that are still senior associates, right? So it all just depends on like, what does that tenure mean? Because sometimes at firms, associate is not just a 2-year program. Like it's like a long program until you hit principal or VP route. So I don't, and then of course, like you can be like a VP or principal. And then for specific positions, if you're coming from consulting, a few things. The most common route is that if you're coming from consulting, a lot of investment firms have operations teams, meaning like after we buy a company, we have portfolio operations teams that help with managing, growing, and like value creation for that company. And that team is like 90% plus ex consultants. So that is like the picture, like the most, not picture perfect, but like the most logical jump for you. And if you want to get to investing role, you can go from consulting to investing. It just got to be like, you got to be really creative and like scrappy with that. But what a lot of people do is they go from consulting to portfolio operations teams to investing because you're already in the firm. And for KKR, like that team is called Capstone, and that's like ex consultants. So once we buy a business, they're focused on like growing and building that company. And you're doing mostly what you were doing in consulting, but now you're doing it for a private equity firm that actually owns these businesses. So there we go. Would I not hire an IB analyst who isn't top bucket or buckets aren't taken into account? So like buckets, that's a really good question. Like when as a person that's like on the investment team, HR reached out to me and said, hey, we have a new seat open now. Here's a stack of resumes. Can you let me know who you want to interview? And then set up first round, second round interviews, right? They're not going to tell me which ones are top bucket. Like HR is not going to say, hey, I found out that Sophie was top bucket and TMT Goldman. And it's not going to be on your resume, I don't think. If so, like I wouldn't put it on there. It's kind of bragging a little bit, but so I'm not really going to know. I'll be able to tell if like you just don't know financials, you don't know regular banking stuff or regular like private equity stuff. So that is going to be like the tricky part there. But like if you're really good during the interviews and you know your stuff and you're passionate about the stuff and you're a great culture fit, like if you were bottom bucket or top bucket, it doesn't matter to me. So, and then what can you demonstrate that you're a good candidate? If you're not top bucket, prep as much as you can, be very sound in the technicals, understand the culture of the firm, understand our portfolio companies, understand why you want to be in this job. Because that all helps understand why you'd be a great fit. Okay. All right, Justin, circle back. Analyst 1. All right, let me go back to your original question. I told you I got you, Chief. Okay. Any advice for people seeking Analyst 1? So if you're looking to do Analyst 1, I'm assuming that you're not looking to do banking. You want to get into private equity right out of school. And if you're doing this,
clarify. So what I meant to say is that I am an Analyst 1, but not doing obviously missed the typical on cycle for all the mega funds and such. So like, at this stage, I'm already a couple 3 months into an investment banking program as a first year analyst. So, but and I used to be in New York City, but now I'm in SF, Menlo Park, actually, like you. So I thought that was interesting, but it's a little bit harder to meet people and network and that stuff out in that area. So we're looking for more specific advice on that front.
Yeah. Great question. Congrats on being there. Sorry that you're in Menlo. It's absolutely dead there. The best thing you can do if you're in Menlo Park is like literally go up Sand Hill Road and then go up to actual city of SF and meet with every single firm, because all of the growth equity, venture, and private equity firms all have offices in the Bay now. So like find out on LinkedIn, like who's in those offices and meet with other analysts or associates that are at those teams and ask them for coffee. Like treat them to a $10 coffee and ask them for 30 minutes. They'll be glad to get away from their desk, and then just ask them about the business. And then ask them how you can like put your resume just in like their, queue for that if they ever have a role coming up. And then you'll be preparing for like a off-cycle gig if you missed the on-cycle recruiting route. And then, once the good thing is like you're in the mix with a lot of these people, right? Menlo seems hard to connect with folks, but like all folks do in Menlo Park is actually network. So I think you're going to be in a really good seat. So I would highly recommend you do that. And then what else would I would do if I was Analyst 1? Try to get a deal closed or done with your bank, or if you're at a different firm. Speaking to that is going to be a really good experience. And then if you are on a team that kind of splits up the pitch deck and the modeling, try to get as much as you can, like on the modeling and technical side, because then like you start building those ridiculous reps. So that's what I would highly recommend for someone that is Analyst 1. Hope to help.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
All right. I'm trying to rip through these guys. Bear with me. How possible is someone who has been working in startups product break into PE VC? Well, if you want to jump into PE, it's going to be a lot harder. Because like the startup culture is so different from like venture or so different from private equity. But it's not impossible, right? Like if you work that product at a startup that is scaled and grown, I think you have a really good experience because you can speak to how you sort of led teams to arrive at like launching a product that drove revenue growth, that drove traction, that eventually helped them raise capital. Like that's good. The more that you can articulate your role within a team being like a driving force in a company's growth story, that's the most important piece if you're coming from that world. And then for VC, you're the sweet spot. That's what they want. It's going to be very easy. I would try to meet with as many of VCs as possible. They'll all want to meet with you because they're probably going to try to diligence your company or the company that you worked at. And then, so it's not going to be impossible. The key is try to make sure that like the team that you're doing or the team that you're on, you can articulate your role and how it drives value to the company's revenue growth or profitability or successful milestones for them to raise more capital. And then on your resume and in interviews, like your story should be, hey, I worked on product at, I'm going to name a company, Nubank. And I worked at Nubank when it was 10 employees, 1 million in revenue. And then I helped scale certain products. And now the business is at 10 billion in revenue and 1,000 companies, stuff like that. If you can sort of have that kind of story, you're a golden candidate for any VC growth job. All right. Should your recruiting prep or perspective change if you're talking to a PE VC? Okay, good. Adam, this is a really good question. So recruiting prep and perspective for VC, it's the Wild West of recruiting because like it's all coffee chats, a lot more of like if a person likes you or not, and very much about like being like top of mind when it comes to a seat coming up. And then like being very passionate about like a product or industry or like a thesis, and then having like showcasing that you have like really good access to founders. That's the most important thing for like VC. For PE, the recruiting approach, these are very structured programs, right? Like there's a headhunter that filters resumes, and then there's a resume, then there's 4 interview processes, like at minimum, and then there's a long case study. Like these are very structured things there. And then for corp dev, it's kind of the Wild West, but the technical part is still structured. Wild West meaning it's harder to get in front of these, and there's no like proper like recruiting timeline to get a job at corp dev. And corp dev is like doing M&A or like strategic finance for a company, not for a firm. So you could be doing like M&A for Nubank and helping to buy up a bunch of other small LATAM fintech companies. And preparing for those, like once you have that interview, like it's going to be the same traditional questions like financials, models, like case studies, etc. And then the different interactions with these people, it's gonna be more chill with VC. You got to meet with a bunch of them. It's a volume game. PE, it's just like really hard to get in front of these people, but once you can, you got to take a long-term bet and build relationships with these people over months, potentially years. And if a corp dev, once you get in front of one, like try to learn as much as you can about the business, maybe join a different team like FP&A or finance, and then jump into corp dev. So you got to be strategic that way. So hope to help, Adam. And then Brandon said, what a good DPI, total value paid in track record ranges for folks trying to get into a big AUM shop? Good question. Like there's, you should look up, I think it's Cambridge and Associates or something that has like DPI benchmarking, right? Like all the private equity firms and growth equity and venture firms are like ranked based on like top decile, top domicile, bottom domicile. So like look up the Cambridge and Associates ranking to figure out like what the top performance is by vintage. So that'll be really helpful. And then could you compare long only funds, hedge funds, and private equity? All right, Sunny wants to work at a hedge fund. But so long only funds, these are funds that invest in public stocks, but only take a long bet. So they say like, I like Nubank. And then like all your work is to understand like the bull case of like Nubank. And then hedge funds, like other hedge funds, are typically long short, meaning that like on your team and the book that you have, you could be doing long a business and you can be doing short a business. And short implies that like you think a stock is going to go down. And then private equity is we're not investing in public stocks, we're investing in private companies only. So the difference between like hedge fund investing and private equity investing is hedge fund investing, you only have access to public information like 10Ks, earnings reports, etc. Private equity, we have mostly private information. Like we sign NDAs with companies and industries, and then we have all of this data, like their customer list, their employee census, all this data to understand whether or not like it's a good or bad company. So understanding that like for hedge funds, you just need to like be really sound on taking a bet on a public business in a direction that way. And then for long, you're betting it's going to go up. Regular long short, you can go up or down. But private equity, like you are in the weeds as if like you run that actual company every single day. Like you can think of it as like, I think Nubank is going to go up, so I'm going to buy the stock. Versus if I were going to do private equity and buy Nubank, I would go visit every single like location that Nubank has in Latin America, and I would like count every customer going into every single location, and how much their average ticket size is, stuff like that, like super deep diligence. So that's a good example. But I can talk about that for like months. So hope that's helpful. And then I'm reaching the end of this list, actually. We're making progress, y'all. All right. If you have access to PitchBook, you can trace headhunters that work. Yep. Perfect. Thanks, Adam. And yeah, so PitchBook is a really good resource, but it is expensive if you don't have access to it. Otherwise, like you can just research and do a bunch of Googling and ChatGPT to figure out who are a bunch of headhunters. Okay. I think I reached the bottom of this AMA. Apologies for going over, guys. I thought it was gonna be a lot shorter than that, but you guys had some amazing questions, and I hopefully all this was helpful.
Hey, Kenny, sorry to cut you off. Can you hear me okay right now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. I'm sure it's super, super helpful for all of us and definitely myself. But just wanted to get your thoughts on, burnout, obviously in finance, whether it's banking, private equity, whatever it is. Definitely a tough job, can be very rewarding, but it is tough. Can you talk about instances where you've seen people burning out and the particular causes of that personally, and also kind of how you've dealt with tough times, and how do you kind of level out when things are very high and all everything's good and rewarding, but also the times when things are up, things are tough, and you're stressed out.
Yeah, dude, great question. And this is an AMA, and my goal is to be transparent. Like finance, you are paid ungodly amounts for what you do. I shouldn't be making this much for what I do. It's ridiculous. I make a ridiculous amount of money, and I am like in my 20s, which is crazy. And I'm very blessed and very fortunate to have that. But you make so many sacrifices working these jobs. If you're just starting out, like in banking or an analyst at a firm, like you can kiss your stress-free Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's goodbye. At max, probably get one good vacation a year. But like normally you're gonna be in this cycle where like you're waking up at 7 a.m., going to work, working all day, literally at your desk all day, eating seamless at like 10 p.m., and then still cranking and leaving the office at like 1, 2 a.m. Like when things are like live. All right. And then like, but constantly in the back of your head, like you're thinking about the deal, the deck you just sent, if a number is wrong in your model, stuff like that. Like I'm talking about like the dark sides of it. And a lot of the stuff comes in cycles. Like you're going to be in jobs where like in cycles where it's intense deal time. A lot of things are happening. You're working on a lot of things. A lot of things are expected from you. Things are in very short timelines. You have to perform. And granted, you have the rest of your life to focus on, like relationships, family, health and wellness, etc. And things are just like very busy. Your job is to not drop balls. But then there's time where like deals are slow and you focus more on sourcing, or like things are a little bit slower. And that's when it's like really good. Then you're like, wow, I'm making a lot of money still, but not that busy. And you can like enjoy life. So PE comes in cycles, where cycles are going to be like super busy, and then cycles are going to be like super chill. So you just got to be willing to do that. But it gets better as you get more senior. But as like a junior person, it's like it's a tough gig, but they're making things like better now. That's why it's so important to for you to diligence the firm to understand if it's a good culture fit for you, because you don't want to be working 80, 100 hours weeks with someone that you just can't stand, right? Like like an interview is both ways. Like this is your life. No one's telling you to go work at Blackstone if everyone at Blackstone's an asshole, but they're not. I think Blackstone and KKR has like the best cultures on the street on investing, but really take the time to understand if like you really like those people. And then I think the biggest causes of burnout is that those cycles, it never slows down. Like if you're in a shop that like they're always doing deals, and deals are very intense. You can think of a deal as like playoffs for the NBA. Like it's like game time. Like your partner is like depending on this. Your MD is like, this is what's going to get them promoted. Like a deal in private equity is like a really big deal, because like a good private equity firm only does 1 or 2 deals a year, right? So like that 1 or 2 deal a year, if you're on that live one, is super important. Everyone's like heightened pressure on it, right? So you can think of it as like sometimes some shops just like are constantly like doing deals, right? So it's like you don't get a slowdown. So that can cause it. Or if they have like poor habits outside of work, like I don't want to get into nobody's business, but like to do this job successfully, you can't eat like shit. You can't party every night. You can't be like drinking every single weekend until you throw up. Like you got to have a very fit mind, very fit body, and like the overall capacity, and be a really good, healthy corporate athlete to do this job. That's why like the folks at like the best firms, like the best hedge funds, the best private equity firms, like they're very much like corporate athletes, right? Like I had to make sure that like my diet is right, my health is right, therapy is right, fitness classes are right, because like the more healthy and equipped I am outside of the office, the better I can perform in the office. But if you're just like absolutely destroying yourself after work and thinking you're going to show up and like perform during work, that's tough. Because I want you to understand something about an investing job. Like in banking, you're going to work 100 hours a week, but 50 of those hours you're doing nothing. You're waiting on comments. That's not the case in private equity. Like when you're at the desk, every minute you're at the desk is like intense intellectual time. Like every minute that I'm sitting at this job, I'm thinking about a business. I'm speaking with a customer. I'm diligencing a company. I'm doing market work. I'm building a model. Like every minute is pushing the ball forward for our deal, right? So to have like that constant intense pressure, you got to be really well equipped. I'm getting into the real of this. So
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thanks so much, Kenny. I think you answered, I think, a lot of my questions kind of in that. So definitely super helpful. Kind of a piggyback on that. Can you talk a little bit about, future? I feel like, within banking, if you're a grinder and, you're committed, I feel like it, is definitely more plausible. But I've talked to a lot of people in PE, and I think the consensus is that a lot of the VPs, principals, they kind of have a certain gear in that they're able to find these investments and know how to really kind of differentiate companies. And so, can you talk a little bit about the grind and climbing that ladder in PE specifically, and also kind of your thoughts on business school?
Yeah, I'll tackle business school first. Business school, because right now, like I'm still like in the mix, still in the game, but like my year in class, like almost all my friends are now in business school. I chose to stay. I don't know why, but business school is a great option because it serves two things. It allows for folks to like bake in like actual rest. Like think of it this way, like sometimes like your firm, like my friend at TBG, he left to go to Harvard, and then TBG paid for him to go to Harvard, and then he's going to come back. So, but while he's at TBG, he was getting wrecked. Like there was no end to his like getting crank cycle. So think of it as like a 2-year break to where like grades don't matter. You travel the world, you meet new friends. If you're single, you find your future spouse, right? Like that type of setup where you have like really good embedded rest. So I think that's a really sound option that you should definitely take up. And you're also learning a lot. Like you're learning how to like manage a business, manage people, everything. Like these are like incredible institutions and you're learning a lot. But like I think the big takeaways, you get like really good embedded rest. The other thing is, and I'm gonna get to the chat questions too, so I'm not gonna skip you guys. The other thing is the business school and then climbing the ladder once you're like more senior. So look, the key like KPI when you're starting out as an analyst or associate is like, can you do the deliverables? Can you build a model? Can you build a memo? Can you do customer calls? Like these kind of stuff. But as you become a VP, as you become a principal, what matters most is can you bring in deal flow? And then can you like quarterback us to a good answer? And can you pick good companies? Right. And I think what helps you when you're at that level is your network. The network that you have of bankers, the network that you have of founders, the conferences you're going to, right? Because like you can be the most valuable director if every single company wants you on their board, right? Like if you go to a conference and I don't know why, but like Kevin, I don't want to pick on you, but like you're on my screen right now. But like if Kevin goes to a conference and every single CEO at that conference is like, holy shit, there's Kevin. Oh my gosh, that's Kevin. Kevin has differentiated deal flow. Like he can meet with those CEOs, he can get coffee, get dinner with them, hang out with their families and be like, let's build a relationship. And then like 1-2 years down the road, that company wants to raise capital. Who are they going to go to? They're going to go to Kevin, right? You can take that relationship anywhere you want. You can take that relationship to KKR, to Blackstone, to TPG, to Vista Equity, anywhere you want. So I think when you're at that level of like just deals and returns and all that, what matters most is your network, your ability to like close a deal, but most importantly, your network to bring in like amazing deal flow. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question.
No, it does and more. Thanks so much, Kenny.
Absolutely.
Kenny, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Kevin here. So first and foremost, thanks for the very informative session. I've built most of my experience in healthcare. So I've been working in corp dev in healthcare in Canada for the past 6 years and want to pivot into private equity. How would you find healthcare comparing to the other verticals that you have been involved with?
Yeah, good thing. Here's a really good example. If anyone in here wants to join a private equity firm or a hedge fund or a VC or growth fund that invests in healthcare, your first thing you should do is reach out to Kevin, right? Because Kevin was corp dev at a healthcare company. He's probably an expert in the healthcare space. If his company is good, Kevin can probably introduce you to the CEO. That's differentiated access. If I was a healthcare investor, Kevin, I would probably grab coffee with you and learn everything about your business, right? Like that's what I would do. That's a good example. But for healthcare investing versus like fintech versus consumer versus industrials, healthcare is a little bit more unique because it's extremely regulatory driven. And I think fundamentally, you're not going to get an interview at a place if you don't know how to speak the lingo of like what's happening with healthcare, what's happening with payers, what's happening with all this stuff. So you have the ability to like understand the regulatory landscape in healthcare. That's hyper important. And then within investing, like our teams at KKR for healthcare, you can do bio and pharma, you can do healthcare services, you can do healthcare software. So it depends on like what vertical you want to do. And yeah, but like the day-to-day of our experience is not that different. Like we're still going to be like meeting with customers, we're still going to be diligencing, meeting with founders of healthcare companies to figure out if they're good or bad businesses. But the recruiting process, like there's not going to be a healthcare specific headhunter. There's not going to be a healthcare specific HR person. But what you would do is if you're interested in pivoting into private equity, you would first and foremost get your LinkedIn and your resume in a really polished position that showcases that like you are a knowledgeable healthcare operator or healthcare business builder. And then reach out to a headhunter and say, hi, I'm Kevin. I've successfully worked with this company for this many years. I'm an expert in healthcare. I want to pivot to healthcare venture, or healthcare private equity, or healthcare growth equity. Here are my top firms. I would love to get 10 minutes just to chat about the pipeline of opportunities that you see coming up. And then since you have a more niche background and kind of a niche kind of like interest, that puts you in a really good position to be a good candidate. Because like if I'm a healthcare investment firm and a headhunter has 2 resumes, someone that's from a non-healthcare background, and then you from a healthcare corp dev background, I'm going to pick you. So if you want to stay in this industry in terms of healthcare investing, I think you have a pretty good shot, given that you have pretty like more niche background.
Got it. Thanks.
Perfect. All right. And then Sunny, also for all this, for the folks that are left, I'm new to Leland, so sorry if I absolutely butchered this AMA, but hopefully it was like value add. And if there are Leland folks on this call and I said stuff that's like either illegal or against protocol, I apologize. I'm just winging it. But I do have coaching offerings if you guys want to have like more in-depth conversations about like resume review, interview prep, all this other stuff. So feel free to like sign up for those if you want like more elaborate questions, but I do have to jump in about 10 minutes. So I'm gonna try to run through these last text questions. And then Sunny, do you see folks? Oh yeah. So sometimes like the dream job is to get to a hedge fund. And like the only way that we'll do it is to do 2 years of banking, 2 years of private equity, then we get to go to a hedge fund. So I see a lot of folks that are leaving their 2 to 3 years of private equity associate years to join hedge funds. Because one, it's like you get paid a lot more, but then 2, you also have like a lot of like the institutional chops of understanding how to build like an investment thesis on a business, understanding market and diligence, et cetera. Because you're going to do the same job, you're just going to have less information. So a lot of people, most folks that leave private equity that don't go to business school actually go to a hedge fund. And hedge fund is like a beast of a recruiting cycle. So Sunny, hit me up after that if you want to learn like the hedge fund recruiting route. Like I went through that and I got friends that are at Coatue, Tiger, in the whole hedge fund world. And it's a very rewarding career if you get it, but it's a crazy pathway to get there. And then, so PitchBook, So for PitchBook, there's like a bunch of information on companies and headhunters and stuff. But yeah, that's probably the most official way to talk about that one. Vista Equity, do you know about their test and how it compares to their entire shop versus others? Robert Smith says he is objectively assessment based, but is that just marketing? So my view on that is that the Vista test is like a cheat sheet for HR to like filter through the resumes, right? Like I haven't done their test personally, but I think it's probably a dumb thing to do because, like, I don't know, I could be having a bad day or a bad internet connection, and the test may not be that helpful or useful. So, like the assessment test and stuff, I know it's like the new trend and all that, but like just try to be as sound and prepped up as you can on those things before you take the actual one. Take as many practice tests as you can. Chat with people that took tests before and try to get as many answers as you can so that you can get through that. Because what's funny is that you can go through the whole test process and then that'll just filter you to then kick off like the official process. Like you're still going to have to go through behaviorals. You're still going to have to go through technicals. You're still going to have to go through a case study. It's just like an extra layer at the beginning. And that's just because the demand for these jobs are so high. Like I don't want to like brush over, but like getting these jobs are very hard. That's why I like platforms like Leland and having a coach and like being in a mix and having a network is like so important because like these jobs are really hard to get. It's like harder to get these jobs than it is to get into like Harvard and stuff. And like literally every day I get like 5 LinkedIn requests and emails from folks that are trying to like network and recruit and try to like learn about my job at KKR. So like trying to find a way to like get through the masses, I think is important. I think this is just a cop out by Vista Equity just to have a way to filter candidates. So that's that. But the sad thing is like after you do that ridiculously hard test and you pass it, you're still gonna have to go through the rest of the recruiting process. So, but when I tell you that there's others cool software investment firms like that don't have a test, like this is not the only firm in the world. They're really good though, very good. And Robert Smith is an absolute legend. And then, okay, the intensity of my role. Thanks. Look, I love my job. Like I actually do. Like I'm paid to ask questions to founders and CEOs every day and learn as much as I can. It does get intense. Like I want to be real about that. When I was starting out, like I did miss some holidays and it was kind of tough, but I don't want you to make it seem like it's like the worst job in the world. Like it's crazy. Like I'm paid to learn. And then can you imagine speaking to us about the origination work is done successfully as a senior point? Oh yeah, so sourcing is depending on the firm. Sourcing can be a really big part of the job. So for me, my job is split into 3 pieces: sourcing, diligence, and then managing a portfolio company. So for sourcing, that's me going out conferences, meeting with CEOs, reaching out to folks, and like trying to bring in like a good company for us to invest in. And then diligence is like once the live deal is like real live and like they want us to invest and we want to invest in them, we got to learn as much as we can about this company to figure out if it's a good or bad business. And then portfolio company work. So like once we own the company, we have to work with the CEO, CFO, CHRO to make sure that like we're hitting our financial goals, we're building the teams, our culture is good, and that we're hitting all of our KPIs, handling our board meetings, etc. But on the sourcing side, it's really cool actually. Like I get to travel all across the world and like meet with companies, get to go to Europe and like meet with businesses. I'll have like a list that I pulled from like top 100 companies that are growing, and I'll reach out to every single one of those, and I'll have coffee chats and meetings with like a handful of them. It's cool, just building a network and like trying to find founders to work with. And what's good is if you can get experience doing that early, then it only compounds. Like your network compounds, your ability to sort of face rejection and sort of create a way to get in front of folks compounds. And you are a super talented sort of potential prospect for senior roles down the line. So hopefully that helps. And then boom, and then the rest. So thank you, Sunny. Appreciate your questions. Thank you, Rishi. Appreciate your questions. I appreciate folks for staying longer than anticipated. Hopefully that answers everyone's questions. If not, then hit me up on this Leland platform. We can get some more time. And then boom. Oh, thanks, Patty. Appreciate that. Yeah, I want to be a resource for everything buy-side recruiting, whether it's hedge funds, private equity, et cetera. So we're gonna wrap this up, and then yeah, good luck, guys.
Good deal. Thanks, Kenny.
Right. Absolutely. Cheers. And meeting for all. All right, guys. Have a great weekend. Bye.